Hi everybody, welcome back to part 9, the final part of the Special Hobby 132 scale Tempest build. So in this video I'm going to be finishing the model off by fitting the engine. I actually built the engine a few episodes ago and it's been sitting on the bench waiting to be fitted. So I'll start off with that. We've then got the propeller to put together and all the final bits and pieces, fit the canopy and so on, give the model a final clean up. And then we're all done. I'm pretty happy with the result. And I'll show you how it all came together in this last part. So we'll get over to the bench and make a start this week. Okay, so let's get started and finish this one off in this episode. The first thing I'm going to do is to sort out the engine bay, and the first pieces to fit to it are these little brackets which are provided in resin in the Special Hobby kit. And these are just the fasteners for the engine cowlings that go along the firewall here, or the rear bulkhead to the engine bay. There are 10 of those to fit, so we'll cut them out and just attach them with a bit of CA. Now, you've seen the engine being built in a previous episode. It's a while ago. This has been on the bench for a bit. But before I fit it, I'll just need to paint the engine bay and the firewall in interior green. Give it a bit of weathering, and then we can pop the engine in. After the green has dried, I just gave that a coat of gloss varnish, some Tamiya acrylic gloss, followed by just picking out the detail with this panel line accent colour. This is the dark brown Tamiya accent colour. I'll just remove that now. This is an enamel product, so it just rubs off the gloss acrylic. That just brings the detail out a little bit. I've got some picking out with black to do, some of these boxes on the bulkheads, so I'll do that next. After a coat of Tamiya flat, just to level everything up again, I can just add some dry brushing now, just to bring out some of the highlights on this bulkhead. Okay, coming back to the engine, I wondered whether or not to fit the exhausts after putting the engine into the airframe, but I think to make sure that I can get them all lined up nice and straight, I'll fit them now and then just drop the engine in. So hopefully that's the right way around to do it. These are the exhausts that are provided in the high-tech version of the kit. These are in resin, which are obviously open-ended. The ones that are provided in plastic in the basic version of the kit are these, and you can see that they're in two halves, so when you glue them together you do get an open-ended exhaust. And I think if I was using these, they wouldn't look too bad, and if you'd be concerned about sanding off, smoothing the join line, I wouldn't bother, because there is a weld line or a weld seam halfway along each exhaust stack. So actually they could work out fairly well. but obviously I've got the resin ones, so that's what I'll be using. I've given these a coat of Tamiya lacquer dark iron, and now I'm just going to weather them. A couple of them I'll leave fairly clean, but the ones further back on the engine I'll weather with some deck tan just to lighten them up a bit, just to represent the deposits from the forward exhaust stacks. So I'll get those weathered up. I'll probably use some weathering powders on them as well and get them fitted to the engine. I'm just using some Vallejo Old Rust weathering powder here, and although that's not meant to represent rust, these exhausts didn't create iron oxide, but whatever it was, the deposits from the fuel were a red colour, so that's what I'm trying to reproduce just on the insides of them. Now I've weathered these to different degrees, so I've paired them up basically, left and right of the engine. So I've got a couple which are virtually pure dark iron, and then varying degrees of the tan as we go back along the engine, to the point where the rearmost stacks, these two, are almost tan all over. As you might notice, I've changed my knife blade in my X-Acto this morning, and just a bit of advice, do it a bit more carefully than I did. So as I'm going along here, I'm just making sure that the stacks are all lined up, and I think it's the right decision to do these before mounting the engine into the airframe, because trying to manoeuvre what's quite a big model really, to get all these lined up, I think I'll probably have done some damage. These Sabres were enormous engines. They're a 24 cylinder, and I think I mentioned when I was putting the engine together that they were quite a bit more powerful than a Merlin, but then they needed to be to haul an aircraft the size of a Tempest into the sky. It was also because of its design, which was basically a boxer horizontally opposed engine. They were quite heavy and complicated as well, with all the valves and what have you. So certainly in the early stages of development, the engine was fairly unreliable, I think. Okay, I'm happy with those. This is just a bit of black panel liner. Just into the end of the exhaust, into the openings. Now I'll fit the engine, and when I test fitted the engine, as I was putting the fuselage together, I put some little styrene supports onto the inside of the fuselage, so that's going to enable me to just put a bit of CA onto those either side. And that should be enough to hold the engine into position. Okay, time to take a look at the radiator now, get that finished off. This is the very distinctive inlet in the chin opening on the Tempest. It's immediately recognisable. And I've already fitted the two radiator faces, the main radiator faces. These elements go inside like that. And here I've made a gaff because this piece needs to be backing onto this forward radiator piece that I've put in. And as you can see, it's not going to go in now. It needs to go behind, and there's no way I can get it in at this stage. So I'm going to have to think of a way of sorting that out. It's just something that I missed in the instructions. But generally, this inlet tube has a ring round it like that, and that whole assembly pushes through this radiator face here, this part of the radiator that I've missed out. The problem with it is that it doesn't fit. You can see the tube's too big for the hole in the radiator, and it's one of those infuriating things in the special hobby kit that you get fit problems like this that are really completely unnecessary. How difficult is it to mould a part such that that tube goes straight through that hole? And it just slows assembly down, and it's been the same most of the way through this build, that you get a decent result but after an awful lot of extra work that you really shouldn't need to do. So I'm going to have to think of a solution, and the best I can do, I think, is to cut the edges out of this so that I've just got the ring that will then go in the hole at the back there, and hopefully see if I can get a decent result with it. So the first thing I need to do is to get this hole opened up so that I can fit the inlet tube into it. It probably doesn't need an awful lot. And then we've got this little round piece that goes on the back, and that just goes on the rear face, the rear radiator face that I've already got onto the model there. So what I need to do now is just trim off this surplus to leave a circle, and hopefully we should be alright at that stage. I'll just carve it away. Okay, so hopefully that'll fit now. That should just plug in to the forward part of the radiator. So let's get these parts painted up and see if we can get them together. Let's do some assembly now. I have made life difficult for myself here. I should really have done all this work before closing the nose up. This is the radiator flap, and it's got an actuator on it which I'm going to recreate using some nickel silver rod. This is 0.5mm. It's going to be pretty difficult to see it, but I will fit it anyway. Just need to gauge the kind of length that I'm going to need. Just have it slightly open. I'll just have to be careful with that, it's very, very delicate. You just see the actuator inside. So I think that's the underside finished. Next step is the propeller. So I've already cleaned all these up. Fairly simple assembly. We've just got a back plate, the 4 props and the spinner. Unfortunately, as I've been priming these blades, I've noticed that there's quite a nasty sink mark right down at the root, and it is visible even when you've got this propeller into the back plate. It will just show above the spinner, so I'm going to have to fill those. They don't look good enough to put on the model just yet. Okay, so the last few pieces to go on. We've got the footrest, pitot tube, and this part which comes out of the bottom of the aircraft near the step. I'm not sure what it is. Must be something to do with an aerial of some sort, and I've done that from nickel silver rod, which I use a lot, as you know, and the nickel silver rod replaces this horrible piece of plastic here, which is not even round, and it would take a lot of cleaning up. So the rod gives a lot better finish to parts like that. You can see the number of injection molded parts in the kit that you don't use. They're either for the Mark II version, the radial engine version of the Tempest, or the parts that have been replaced with resin from the kit. I've also got these resin gun barrels which I'll paint up and fit. So closing in on the finish now. Also, on reflection, looking at this pitot tube, it's also quite clunky, so I'm going to improve that as well. So I've got some brass tube here which I'm going to replace the actual pitot, and I've inserted into the end of that tube some nickel silver tube as well, just to give the end point of the pitot. So that's a lot more in scale, looks a lot better than the fairly clunky kit part. So I can cut that off. Just file a little notch in it just to take the tube a bit better. So I think that'll look better than the kit part when it's painted. Okay, Canopy next. And I just need 4 tiny dots on the canopy. Just to hold it in place. And this is Canopy glue, which is an acrylic glue, so it'll take a little bit of time to dry. Just keep the tape off that decal at the side there. It'll be a disaster if I pull that off at this stage. So I'm just going to leave that for a while. In the meantime, we'll just pop the propeller on. Now, unfortunately, the way the kit's engineered, Special Hobby don't give you the provision to put a bush in this to enable the propeller to spin, so I'm just going to have to glue it in place. if you're really that keen, you could make something up, but the difficulty is that I've fitted the resin engine, which has this front section here in solid resin, so it'd be quite a difficult task, I think. Not impossible, but it's not something I'm bothered about. So we'll just glue the prop into position. And again, we'll let that dry, and then that'll be job done. Get this tape off, and I'll get the final photographs for the end of the video. Okay, so that's it. We're all done for another build, and this one has been pretty tough. I'd say it's probably the hardest build of a aircraft, certainly 132 scale aircraft, that I've ever tackled, and that's mainly due to the slightly limited run nature of the Special Hobby kit. It's not quite limited run, but some of the fit issues in the kit really do take a lot of patience and perseverance to get right, so that you end up with a half decent result. And it's taken a while. I think I've probably been at this for nearly 3 months now, so it's a little bit longer than I would normally take on an aircraft of this size. But it certainly makes up for a nice model if you do see it through to the end. It's every inch in Tempest. I don't think there's much to choose from the stated scale errors or size errors on the nose. Some of the proportions people say are wrong, but I think especially if you display the engine open as I have, it's much less noticeable, and doing the correction to the intake as well that I made also helps to overcome that perceived problem as well in the kit. But I'm certainly happy with the result, and as I say, I really like the Tempest. I think it's a really nice looking aircraft, very aggressive looking. The sit of it is just right, I think, and it's going to be a nice addition to the collection. So I hope you've enjoyed the series, and if you're building any of the versions of the Special Hobby kit, I hope some of the little fixes and tips that I've hopefully transferred during the course of the video series will have helped you overcome some of those problems in the kit in your own builds. So I'm all ready for a new project. I'll be talking a little bit about that in the next couple of days, so stay posted. If you're subscribed and you switch your notifications on, you'll get to know when that next build series comes up. But until then, thanks for watching this one, everybody. Stay safe, and I'll see you in a few days' time. Bye for now.